The sun came up like thunder out of China across the bay. Thus wrote the British Empire's poet laureate. He said that China was where the sun would rise. Rudyard Kipling was not wrong. But no one, least of all him, could have imagined that the sunshine itself would shine so brightly across not only China, but now across half the world. The sun has risen in China. The last time I was there, I couldn't get moving for the booming commercial bonanza that is the Chinese economy. I traveled on a train that traveled at hundreds of kilometers a mile, hundreds of kilometers an hour, where you could perch your coffee cup on the windowsill and it would not spill. And it wouldn't be like my train to London today, cancelled without any adequate explanation. The world's most populous country, the world's biggest manufacturing economy, with the world's biggest armed forces, and the Americans, some of them, still dream of having a conflict with China. China, of course, concentrates first and foremost on its own people. That's what its own people require of their government. China has no ambition for hegemony anywhere in the world. In fact, it loathes it. And any country that's ever dealt with China knows that China is a real rarity that doesn't interfere in your domestic political affairs. China has problems. Every country does. Some of them are quite unexpected. The one-child policy has been relaxed long now in China, but the birth rate continues to be a problem. Finding marriage partners can be a problem. A shortage of energy, at least fossil energy, is an ongoing problem. But China has thrown all of its energy into the building of an alternative world, and that is BRICS. I was recently in Kazan in Russia, where the Chinese leadership and the Russian leadership towered over a new construction called BRICS, which has the capacity to change the world and change it for the better. Today, we'll be talking to someone who knows, a young Chinese woman journalist and broadcaster, well-traveled, and has lived in the West as well as the East. Li Jingjing is a guest to savor. I know that you'll agree. It's Have It Out with Galloway. Li Jingjing is, as I said, one of China's brightest young journalists and broadcasters, well-traveled throughout the world, in America here, in China there, traveling in the Far East quite regularly. She knows about the West, and she sure knows about China. Li Jingjing, thank you for joining us here on Have It Out with Galloway. I tried to summarize in my introduction there some of the strengths of China. Let's start with them, accentuate the positive. The last time I was in China, I literally could not move in the shopping streets for the crowds trying to spend their money. Yet I keep reading in Western newspapers and magazines and hearing from pundits and so-called economists that the Chinese economy is somehow in trouble. How does it look to you from there?
Thank you, George. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your kind introduction about me. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Well, I mean, it's funny that when some Western experts and media saying China's economy is not doing good, I mean, they have been saying China's economy gonna collapse for the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years,
least,
maybe.
yes.
It's so funny. You're right. So I remember 30 years ago, 20 years ago, they say China is going to collapse anytime. And 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they keep saying that. But today, they are saying China is a threat. So it's funny. We always joke about this on Twitter, on social media. We say, well, it's like Schrodinger's China. Is China's economy gonna collapse, or is China being a threat to you? So what do you want? Like they cannot keep their narrative straight. The thing is, of course, we are facing some challenges, like real estate or some areas, like many other countries nowadays in the world are facing challenges in economy. China is no difference. But first, here's some interesting facts. China has contributed to the world growth in the past 10 years more than G7 countries combined. I think that says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's the latest data. And second, China's economy has been growing rapidly, exponentially, for the past 40 years. That's incredible. And that changed many people's life, including my life, including 1.4 billion people's life living in China. But you that number cannot just keep going and going. There's a limit, right? So of course now we are seeing some slowing down, but that's normal because after the past 40 years of growing exponentially, now we are transitioning to a different period. So what's the different period? Now China focus not just on the numbers, not just on the GDP. China is actually focusing on how to make the economy more sustainable, how make it more like greener. So I think now China focus economically focuses on more like we focus on the quality rather than just a number. Because look at the economy in the United States or in some other developed countries, you probably have a very good looking GDP numbers, but look at the average people's life, they're still paying a lot more for necessity like food or water or gas or electricities. But now China is transitioning to a different period. We focus on the quality, innovation, high-tech technologies. And also, it's also interesting. I'm not sure whether this is a foreign concept to some experts, because now as our president and our leaders emphasize in multiple government meetings, now China focuses on how to make our reduce the wealth gap between people living in different regions, in different provinces, also between the super rich and the the people, impoverished people. So China now focuses on let's make it more balanced. The rich cannot keep getting richer, and we have to relocate some resources to people living in remote areas, say like Northwest China, Southwest China, give them prioritize their economy. So there are well, from if you only read Western media, you probably feel, well, China's economy gonna collapse any day. But now I think we are entering a healthier period. Focus on the quality, focus on technology, innovation, focus on how to make we have good quality of life, good economy in numbers, but the numbers actually change, bring benefit to average Chinese citizens, to villagers, and also make it sustainable. Bring economy growth doesn't mean we have to destroy the environment. And we have a saying, the green lucid water and green mountains are actually gold mountains, which means it's important to protect the environment. So we're transitioning to a different period. And actually, China experienced many financial challenges in the past 3 or 4 decades as well. But China successfully deal with that. And actually, I think during 2008, China was the only country that didn't collapse as other countries are facing dramatic economic financial crisis. Sure. That's because Chinese policymakers keep changing the policies based on the current circumstances. So I have full confidence that China can successfully deal with the challenges nowadays. And you know what? I think China is the only developing country that escaped the trap that neocolonialism has put on global South, because based on the current financial economic structure that the former colonizers designed, global South countries, developing countries should always stay at the bottom of global value chain. You only import their expensive high value added products, and you only export your raw material, your natural resources, and you consume the obsolete technologies from the global north, developed countries. So like in that way, the global south countries can no longer outcompete the global north countries, right? But China, well, you can say it's a miracle, but based on people's hard working and wisdom. China escaped that trap. China is the only global south countries that escaped that trap. I think that gives some inspirations to other developing countries. So I think that's the reality we are facing now. I'm quite confident about
I
the future.
can assure you it is a foreign concept in Western countries to close the wealth gap and to ensure the fair distribution of wealth across all regions of a country. As someone from the north of this country, I can personally testify to that. You talked about colonialism. One of the most important developments in breaking the hegemony of the former and current colonial powers is the BRICS. I was a child when Bandung happened and the effort to make the non-aligned movement took off. But BRICS is the most exciting thing that's happened in my lifetime, and China seems fully committed to that. Speak to that one, please.
Yes, I think like mentioned earlier, global south countries or developing countries have been suffering long enough because the current economic and financial structure is not fair. It's exploiting, it's designed to exploit developing countries. So some Western strategists and thinkers will say, well, our Western countries' economy is doing so good because we have a much better system, because we have a good system. Oh, we are doing good. Even you're not doing good because of your system sucks. But that's not true. The Western world, especially the United States, they maintain their global hegemony, their exceptional status in the world. It's because of they designed this global economic structure, especially using US dollar as the reserve global reserve trade currency. So in that case, so whenever there's a financial crisis, US has faced many financial crises, but why they escape that? Because they can just use that hegemony, dollar domination, to export their financial crisis to other countries, especially to developing countries. Cause inflation in other countries and make sure the dollar will flow back to America. So in other words, they are successful because they are using developing countries as their blood bags. They always say global south countries are less developed, or they may say you are stupid, cannot innovate things. But no, all the system, all the global south countries are so rich, they're not poor. To take a look at Africa, to take a look at Latin America, to take a look at Asia. Like global south countries was colonized not because they were poor, they were colonized because they were so rich in natural resources, in oil, in coal, in agricultural products. Global South country was so poor and they are providing the food to global North. So that's why, but look at many global South countries nowadays. Many global South countries in Africa and Latin America, they used to be the bread baskets for the world, not just for their continents, for the world. But some of the countries now have to import corns, wheat, these basic agricultural products. Why? Because they used to design products for the global north, design products for to customize, to cater their global north masters' tastes, such as coffee, such as tobacco, such as this, cash crops, this kind of stuff. And they destroyed their own economy. But all this happened because it was designed, this new colonialism designed to make global south countries stay at the bottom of global value chain. You export low value added products and you import high value products from the global north. But even the imported high-value products were already obsolete technologies of the global north. So you can never outcompete. In that way, this colonialism designed to make global south countries lose their food sovereignty. And then plus the military bases, you basically lost many of your sovereignties, not just food sovereignties, technology sovereignty. So that what global colonialism has done to the global south.
Yeah.
But now, I think many people already noticed there's a strong trend from the global south countries. They're uniting, say, BRICS, and also have many other regional mechanisms, cooperation mechanisms, such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In Latin America, there's a CELAC, and the African countries also have their regional mechanisms. And BRICS, of course, is attract the most attentions. And many you may argue, well, these countries in BRICS, in these countries, they have differences. Sometimes the differences is political differences. But you know what? Regardless of those differences among all these members and partnerships, there's a common pursuit among all these members. Say BRICS members, there's a common pursuit among these countries because they are pursuing a more equal, just, democratic world order that global south, which is the global majority, has more say on the international stage. And also global south no longer want to be the blood bags for the global north. So I think this is very important and very important, especially for developing countries, and that eventually one day we will say goodbye to neocolonialism.
Well, look, we don't often get to hear from young Chinese people, at least not as articulate and pleasing as you. So let me focus for a minute, if I may, on the situation for young people, for young women perhaps, in China. You had to introduce the one-child policy because your population might otherwise have continued to vault and was already the biggest in the world. But now the birth rate is falling. The marriage rate is falling. Families have difficulties in finding marriage partners. How does that impact on the lives of young people?
Well, I think this is a very common trend for countries that are moving to a much more developed area. I think the same thing happened to the United Kingdom before, happened to the United States, happened to France and Germany before. So when people are much better off, young people tend to maybe care much more about themselves. And not unlike in the past, they probably, when they were less financially independent, they try to find a unit, try to get married at a very young age and have several kids at a very young age. But nowadays, things are different because we got much richer than before. For example, many women in the old days, women probably got married very early because maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it wasn't that easy for women to find well-paid jobs in the society. But nowadays, women, especially in China, are in every field, in every businesses. Sometimes they are the boss, they're the leaders, they are very financially independent. So, and they have, many of them have much higher educations. So marriage is not the thing, it's a necessity to be independent in the society. So I think that's natural. But it doesn't mean they are against marriage or something. I think that's a natural trend in the society. And the one-child policy has been abolished several years ago. Now, people in China can have 3 kids. Each family can have 3 kids. And many of my friends already got married a long time ago. They have 2 kids and 3 kids. So I think it's important to notice now we are in the period that people, whether you're women or men, you have much freedom to choose the way you want to live. Like me.
Yeah,
like me.
well,
like
I
I
wasn't
have
going
the chance
to
to
say that,
be a journalist,
but
to travel.
of course, Material well-being is not the same thing necessarily as happiness. And I'm wondering, how happy would you say young Chinese people are? Let's have an index 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are Chinese young people today?
Oh, well, I don't think I can speak for the majority of Chinese people, but based on my interactions with the young people, because I think I still consider myself as one of the young generations, and I also interact with a lot of young students, like college students. I always go to top universities in Beijing and Shanghai and talk to the students at journalism schools, at international relations schools, and I would say the young people are happy, quite happy, and they have a vision for their future. Um, I can give you a few examples. When I go to universities like Peking University, Tsinghua University, Fudan University, all top university in China, the Chinese students in their 20s are so smart. Many of them already fluent in English. My English was not as good as theirs when I was their age. So they already outcompete me. And not only were they good at fluent in English, they also speak several other languages. One of my Iraqi friends came to China. They were surprised the Chinese students are so good at Arabic. And not only are they good at Arabic, they understand politics. They can talk to him about politics in the Middle East and BRI. And one student told him, well, I'm not just learning Arabic, I'm also learning Swahili because I'm going to go to Africa. Wow. And this is one of the many examples. One case of go very trendy on Chinese social networks 2 years ago at a high school, so even younger generation. So one teacher, very problematic teacher, came to the school, gave a very later we know is very problematic speech because this older teacher, probably in his 50s and 60s, spreading some very awful and racist ideas to the high school students in China. But then one student stood up from the crowd, go to the stage, grab the microphone from the teacher, and tell all his students, like all my classmates, don't listen to the bullshit from this teacher because he's a racist and he's problematic. And why are we studying here? Why are we studying hard today? We're studying for the rejuvenation of Chinese nation. I can give you countless examples like this from my interactions. The Chinese young generations are the most...
That's a good one to end on, Li Jingjing. You are a ray of that sunshine coming out like thunder over Mandalay. Thank you so much indeed for that tremendous interview. Let's go to the audience wall, see what the audience think about that or about any other issue. Dr. Annie Shah.
So the question really is, first of all, I need to really delve into the dynamics of the question. We are really navigating towards, certain complexities in this modern world at the minute, as we foresee. And China has emerged as a dominant force on the global stage, not only due to its vast economic expansion, but also through its strategic initiatives that extend its influence worldwide, as we see. Mm-hmm. So with the rise of the Chinese economy, we have seen a significant shift in international trade dynamics, diplomacy, even technological advancement. However, this ascent is not without its challenges. Even Li Jingjing was, talking about that, including the trade tensions, political scrutiny, as well as internal economic pressures. So in the light of all these factors, George, my question really is, how do we view China's economic growth as a pivotal element in shaping its global influence? And what sort of challenges do we believe it faces that could impact its standing in the international community, considering the conflicts that we are seeing in the world?
Thank you, Doctor. A very erudite question indeed. China's economic growth, its rise on the economic front, has not yet been entirely matched by its soft power. Its soft power is lagging some way behind. And that's partly because of prejudice and barriers, but it's also partly because of a certain maladroitness on their part in the past. If every Chinese spokesperson spoke and, dare I say, looked and came across like Li Jingjing, China's reputation in the world would be even higher than it is today. But that's not always the case. Ditto, China's political impact in the world is nothing like as great as its economic impact in the world is. And there's a time lag on that also. China's leaders are very cautious about getting involved in world problems beyond verbal. There's been no shortage, for example, of Chinese government statements about the genocide in Gaza, but there haven't really been any actions by the Chinese state in relation to them. When I have argued publicly there could have been. China, more than any other country in the whole world, could have said at the height of the genocide in Gaza, we are going to sail a Chinese hospital ship into the bay in Gaza to treat the wounded and the sick, and Prime Minister Netanyahu will have to make up his mind whether he's going to fire on it or not. That kind of edging forward of China's hard power will, I think, come, but has not yet come. But the point is, as Pakistan knows, for example, whoever is in power in Pakistan has a friend in China, even if they overthrew the previous friend in a military coup. China has never once intervened or interfered in internal Pakistani politics, even though some of us might have wished that they would. Some of us might have wished that they had demanded the freedom of Imran Khan, for example, but China will not do that kind of thing. And African leaders frequently point out that they are in Africa to help in a win-win situation the development of Africa and to help Africa make the most of what it has, which is considerable, but they never get involved in internal African political matters, even if some of us might have wished that they would or that they had. Hope that helps, Doctor. It's not a complete answer, I know. Darren Stanton is back. Danton, what would you like to say, Darren?
Well, again, this is more kind of to the UK. As you know, one of my major things that I do is I'm asked really on a global basis to assess the body language and kind of credibility of a politician. So it's been one of my beliefs quite for a long time. Again, I've assessed sort of Trump and various world leaders, but especially in the UK with our sort of Keir Starmer, there seems to be just a massive lack, in my opinion, of passion, of credibility. I mean, dare I sort of reference some of your performances in Parliament that are very robust and you can see you're speaking from the heart. And I think we just seem to be lacking anyone in sort of politics at the moment, in my opinion, that really gives people inspiration and passion. So it's just been quite interesting of late, certainly the last 6 months, as to there's no one that really shines out. And I'm sure that's reflected.
I feel he's looking bloodless and tired and stressed already, Darren. He's only been in 6 months.
I mean, the gesture that he makes, and in non-verbal communication, there's like two furrow lines here, and he also seems to be in a constant state of sadness and fear. And fear, but what we call a micro-expression, is this kind of sort of a rabbit in a headlight, and he seems to be in this constant state of being surprised. We don't seem to see him being. I mean, he's always on the ropes, if people know that expression, at PMQs. Yeah. I've not seen one since he's been in power where he's actually took control. and really sort of inspired anyone. It's been fascinating.
And it's not as if he's up against any great heavyweight. What's your reading on Kemi Badenoch?
I think, to be fair, she's probably the best ever battle off. I mean, again, it doesn't really inspire any sort of kind of dynamism in a delivery. And I do agree. I think the whole process seems so tired and laboured. And I think the British public were looking for change and rejuvenation. I think they've got the absolute opposite. Right through the cabinet, really, there's nobody that really stands out, in my opinion, who is congruent with what they say and what they say non-verbally. So generally, we have somebody that's passionate, will speak in conjunction with their hand. So, for example, finger jabbing, pointing. Passionate people speak in syncopation, whereas I noticed a lot of the politicians, certainly in the UK, they just don't seem to have any kind of get up and go. It's been very, very interesting for me.
Yeah, I mean, for someone in your trade, there's not much to get too excited about, but I'm glad you haven't lost the knack of interpreting these people. Thanks very much, Darren. Shoaib Sohail is an entrepreneur in Swansea in Wales. Shoaib, welcome.
I am a Pakistani Muslim, and I've been in the UK, immigrated in the UK for the last almost 10 years, and I was raised in Saudi Arabia. So I watch your shows, and I watch a lot of your YouTube video clips, and I had a question, and the question was that I have seen, you say that there are a lot of Muslims there have been attacked by the far right, such as Tommy Robinson and everything, and all of these kind of people. So, and they need to defend themselves. So me as a Muslim, I wanted to ask you, because I have a difference of opinion, and I've been constantly attacked by the Bangladeshi community in Swansea, where I live now. And they're attacking me in a way. They have got a group called Far Right Watch List, and I'm on the top of the list. And it is because I have a difference of opinion. As I said, I'm not from the UK. I live in the UK, but I'm a Pakistani Muslim. And these are the Muslims who are attacking me because they know I don't have any friends or family here. And, they've put up my address, my car registration, where I used to work. So they've done all of these things. So when you say that the Muslims need protection from far right, what about people like me? How do I get protected? And in all honesty, I've got people from Voice of Wales, and what they have done, they have actually protected me against these Muslims. I can't leave my house. I can't go to work because where I used to work, like I said, difference of opinion. And I have actually met Tommy Robinson myself personally firsthand. I didn't see that guy as a racist, and this is me being honest. Like I said, I'm an immigrant. You can tell from my accent.
Well, I feel sorry for you, Sohail. I've got bad news for you. No matter how many bow ties you wear, and no matter how many Superman suits you hang up behind you, these people will never accept you. You're a mascot to them, so that they can claim that they don't hate Muslims. We don't hate Muslims. Look, we've got this toy boy here in a bow tie and a Superman suit, and he doesn't think that we are racists. You're an embarrassment, son. You'd be better to shuffle off the stage. Hido Doug is in Denmark. Let's see what Hido wants to say. Go ahead, Hido. Go to Nick Smith then. Nick, are you there?
Hi, George. Hope you're well.
Oh, good, sir. What would you like to say?
Good, man. I mean, Nigel Farage and Elon Musk have publicly fell out over Tommy Robinson because of the Farage's failure to recognise Tommy Robinson's exposure over the grooming gangs over the last few years. So I just wanted to ask you, mate, because I'm sure you're not a fan of Tommy. Do you recognise Tommy's exposure of the grooming gangs over the last few years, or do you side and agree with Nigel Farage? Thanks for letting me ask.
I'm against them both, as you probably expect me to say. The point about Robinson and Farage and their new friend Elon Musk is that they are seeking to scapegoat Britain's ethnic minority population. Not people who just arrived on the beach. In most cases, people that were born here and are British citizens. They want to scapegoat them for Britain's deep-seated economic, political, social, and cultural ills. which started a long time ago and start from the top. The fish rots from the head, and Britain has rotted from the head. And there ain't no Muslims at the head of British society. So my opposition to them is simple. You want to talk about grooming gangs? Come to me and talk about it. I'm the one that raised this issue in the British Parliament. I'm the one who campaigned and was elected on a pledge to smash these gangs of perverts, some of whom are Muslims, most of whom are not Muslims, some of whom are in the royal family, historically speaking. So this is all an attempt to whip up hatred for a group of a few millions, with the rest being encouraged to blame them for what's wrong in British society. And you already know I won't go along with that. If I see someone being beaten up in the street, I don't need to know anything about the person being beaten up. I don't need to know anything about them to intervene to stop the beating if I possibly can. I will always be on the side of those who are being hunted by packs like Robinson and co. Matthew Alford is in Bath in England. Matthew, welcome back. What would you like to say?
Is the exposure of the Giselle Pellicot rape case in France and, of course, these gangs in Rotherham an indication that such toxic masculinity activity is no longer tolerated by Western society, or conversely, that it's getting worse? Do you have any suggestions for ways to prevent such acts of misogyny from taking place? And to what extent do you think that such cases should be seen differently when there are perhaps political motivations involved?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point, particularly your last one. Who's out there demanding the defenestration of Prince Andrew? Who was there when people like me were trying to expose the role of Viscount Mountbatten as close to the throne in England as it's possible to be, and his involvement in child sexual exploitation in Ireland? Who was there? I was friendless. Nobody wanted to know those hardy few who were seeking to expose that while he was traipsing around in Buckingham Palace. Who was with me when I was denouncing Cyril Smith, who was made a knight, Sir Cyril Smith? Precious few, I can assure you. The British establishment gave him a gong. Who was there when we were trying to expose the likes of Hugh Edwards, the likes of Sir Jimmy Savile, another one knighted, despite everyone knowing what he was doing over many, many years? So it's highly politicized, this. It's being used to whip up hatred against Muslims in Britain. The problem is not Muslims. The problem is men. The problem is men that can't control themselves and feel they have some kind of license to exploit other people, sexually exploit or otherwise exploit. Let's have an end to all exploitation. Let's have a country and a world in which people treat each other as they would wish themselves to be treated. I'm sure Moses himself had something to say along those lines. Charles Kelly is in London. Charles, welcome.
Thank you, George. I wanted to get back to China, and you didn't ask the journalist about Donald Trump. Obviously, Donald Trump's come in and he's talking about trade and tariffs and that sort of thing. I just wondered, I would have liked to have heard how she felt that would affect the economy, how that would affect relations with China under Donald Trump, or is Donald Trump just saber rattling in order to get a better trade deal with China?
Well, I'll tell you what, Charles, it depends what Donald Trump turns up. If it's the Donald Trump that says he walked for miles with Xi Jinping, who got on famously with him, who regards him as one of the great figures in world politics, who respects China and its achievements, if it's that Donald Trump that turns up, all will be well and good. If it's a different Donald Trump on a different day, then we may have problems. But China has the United States potentially in the palm of its hand. China is dumping American debt, to be sure, but it still holds more of it than anybody else in the world. China could end its trade in dollars anytime and require all those who need to buy from China to buy in a different currency. Could be euros, could be the BRICS currency, could be Chinese currency itself. China is more and more cutting out the dollar, but it is still a big customer for the dollar. And if we cut off Chinese goods coming to the Western world, my goodness, we'll have nothing at all to play with. Naeem Malik, last call in Germany. Naeem, welcome back. What would you like to say?
First of all, I'd like to say Happy New Year to everybody. And I want to say it has become clear the deep state has constructed protection walls in forms of government and so-called democracy. Election system is, in end, a choice between cholera and plague. One cannot fight a system following its rules imposed upon us. Workers used to go on strike and negotiate their demands, but have seen no demonstrations have prevented any wars anymore. And people have to invent new actions to oppose universal control and dictatorship. Do you have any ideas how one can do that?
Well, first of all, workers are not dead. First of all, workers are not dead, and they still have considerable power if they are ready to use it and if they are properly organized and led to use it. Consumers have tremendous power. If we decide we're not going to eat McDonald's anymore, which would be a jolly good idea, McDonald's stock will instantly crash and burn. If we decide we're not going to drink Starbucks anymore, which is also an exceedingly good idea, Starbucks will go bust. Consumers, workers, and protesters, demonstrators, and participants in social media discourse and argument, writing letters to the newspaper may be a yesterday thing, but writing a tweet, replying to a tweet, engaging in social media debates and arguments is still a very powerful tool. Society has changed, to be sure, but it's still owned by the same tiny percentage of us that it was always owned by. It's not the 1%, but it's no more than 10%, holding all the wealth and power, while the 90% would have a crisis if they didn't get their wages this week or their salary this month, and who are up to their ears in debt to boot. That's what we've got to change, Naeem, and the sooner we get started changing it, the better it will be for all of us. A Happy New Year to all who have participated in the show and all who will watch it. And God willing, and with a bit of luck and a better train service, I'll be here next week at the same time, in the same place, where you can have it out with Galloway.